A Rock Island woman faces several charges in connection with the death of a young boy.
Police found the body of her son, Zion Staples.
10-year-old Zion Staples found dead in a garbage can.
Hi there, and welcome to a chilling exploration of one of the most mysterious and unsettling cases you'll hear about today. In a quiet neighborhood in Rock Island, Illinois, an ordinary day was about to turn into the beginning of a dark, tangled web of lies, suspicion, and heartbreak. This story isn't just about what happened. It's about uncovering layers of deceit that left investigators and a community stunned. So sit tight, grab your favorite drink, and join us as we unravel the secrets surrounding Sushi Staples and her missing son. It all started with a phone call, a simple act that would ignite a cascade of shocking events. On July 25, 2023, the Department of Children and Family Services, DCFS, received a tip from a concerned neighbor. According to the caller, a child in the home of Sushi Staples had accidentally shot themselves. Alarming, yes, but even more troubling was the growing suspicion that this wasn't just a freak accident. The details were murky, the circumstances suspicious, and the child's identity, a boy named Zion Staples, was at the center of it all. When officers arrived at Sushi's residence on 22nd Avenue, they were met with an air of defensiveness. Sushi claimed ignorance about any such incident and vehemently denied even having a son named Zion. She brushed off the allegations, blaming them on her ex-husband and his new partner. According to her, the couple had been harassing her for years, and this was just their latest scheme to cause trouble. While her frustration seemed genuine, something about her responses left the officers uneasy. Sushi's backstory added more complexity to the case. She was a mother of 8, but only 4 of her daughters lived with her. A healthcare worker at Genesis Hospital, Sushi also juggled her responsibilities as a student at a local community college. Life wasn't easy for her. She was a single mother trying to make ends meet while raising her children. Neighbors described her as reserved but not unfriendly. The children, they said, were often seen playing outside, drawing with chalk and keeping to themselves. But the absence of one child, Zion, had raised questions in the community long before the phone call to DCFS. According to neighbors, Zion hadn't been seen for months. When asked about him, Sushi reportedly made an eerie statement: "He won't be home for Christmas anymore." Such a remark would naturally set off alarm bells, and it did. The anonymous caller who contacted DCFS wasn't the first person to feel uneasy about the situation, but they were the first to act. What was it about Sushi's family that seemed so off? And why was Zion's name shrouded in such mystery? The first encounter between the police and Sushi was tense. Officers asked if they could inspect her basement to rule out the claims made in the report. Sushi flatly refused, stating they would need a warrant to search her home. While she had every right to deny entry, her aggressive tone and refusal to cooperate only added to their suspicions. If she truly had nothing to hide, why not let them take a quick look to clear her name? Sushi continued to insist that the allegations were baseless, fabricated by her ex-husband's new girlfriend, whom she described as unstable and vindictive. But despite her protestations, one detail stood out: the DCFS records. Zion Staples was not just a figment of someone's imagination. He was a real child who had once lived in the Staples household. Furthermore, Sushi was still receiving government benefits for him. If Zion wasn't real, why were the benefits being deposited into her account? The officers left that day, unable to proceed without a warrant, but the investigation was far from over. Their visit had only raised more questions. Sushi's demeanor, her cryptic comments, and her reluctance to cooperate painted a picture of a woman hiding something. The following day, with a search warrant in hand, the police returned to Sushi's home. This time, the dynamic shifted dramatically. Sushi, who had been combative and defiant the day before, appeared nervous and anxious. The search warrant granted officers the authority to enter her home and look for evidence related to Zion's whereabouts. As they combed through the property, Sushi's unease grew palpable. Upstairs, she asked repeatedly if she could call her lawyer, her fear evident in her voice. Meanwhile, officers downstairs searched every corner of the home, particularly the basement. The search uncovered troubling inconsistencies. While there was no immediate sign of Zion, the evidence they found cast significant doubt on Sushi's claims. Her story about identity theft, where someone supposedly used her information to create a fictitious child, seemed increasingly implausible. When confronted with the contradictions, Sushi's composure began to crumble. As the hours wore on, officers pressed her for the truth. They explained that the investigation wasn't just about fraud, it was about determining whether a child had been harmed. Sushi maintained her innocence, claiming that she had never had a son named Zion. Yet when asked about previous interactions with DCFS, she reluctantly admitted they had visited her home in Chicago years earlier, and Zion was indeed listed as a household member at the time. The cracks in her story were widening. Officers pointed out that her financial records indicated she was receiving benefits for Zion, even though she now denied his existence. Faced with mounting evidence, Sushi's denials became more frantic, and her explanations less convincing. The question loomed larger than ever. If Zion wasn't living in the house, where was he? By the end of the second day of investigation, the situation had escalated significantly. Sushi was taken into custody, not for harming Zion, at least not yet, but for fraud related to the benefits she continued to claim for him. This was a pivotal moment in the case. While the fraud charge might seem minor in the context of the larger mystery, it allowed authorities to dig deeper into her life and uncover the truth about Zion's fate. So far, what we have is a story riddled with contradictions, evasions, and unanswered questions. Who was telling the truth? Was Zion truly missing? Or was this a case of mistaken identity blown out of proportion? And if Zion had met a grim fate, what could have driven a mother to such extremes to cover it up? The search of Sushi Staples' home had uncovered disturbing evidence, yet no conclusive answer to Zion's disappearance. Investigators faced growing pressure from the public and media, while Zion's father, Marcus, relentlessly pushed for justice, refusing to let his son's case fade into obscurity. The authorities knew they were against the clock, their resources stretched thin. Without a body or a confession, their case was as fragile as the hope that Zion might still be alive. The second search of Sushi's home revealed faint traces of human decomposition in the basement, detected by forensic specialists and cadaver dogs. This chilling discovery marked a turning point. Paired with the neighbors' testimonies about Zion's isolation and Sushi's erratic behavior, the evidence painted a grim picture. Sushi's inconsistent accounts of the boy's whereabouts made her a prime suspect, but she remained elusive during interrogations. Her version of events shifted with every question. First, she claimed Zion had run away after an argument. Then she suggested her ex-husband might have taken him, a claim Marcus fervently denied. Finally, she alleged Zion had been abducted, though she offered no explanation for her delayed report. Investigators saw these stories as an attempt to deflect blame and stall the investigation. Financial records provided another critical breakthrough. Sushi had continued to collect government benefits for Zion long after his disappearance. Surveillance footage revealed her buying suspicious items, industrial-strength cleaning supplies, plastic sheeting, and gloves, all around the time Zion was last seen. These purchases aligned with internet searches found on her devices, including phrases like "how to clean a crime scene" and "how long before someone is declared dead." The timeline built by the detectives was damning. Zion had been withdrawn from school months before his disappearance under the guise of homeschooling. In reality, he had been isolated, with no contact with friends, teachers, or even doctors. The last confirmed sighting of Zion was a fleeting glimpse caught on a neighbor's doorbell camera. After that, it was as if the boy had vanished into thin air. Public sentiment shifted from hope to outrage. Vigils for Zion turned into marches demanding justice. Marcus, a constant presence at these events, became the face of the movement, his voice breaking as he spoke about his son. "We owe Zion the truth," he declared. "No child should be forgotten, and no parent should endure this nightmare." Sushi was arrested on charges of child neglect, fraud, and obstruction of justice, while investigators worked to build a case for murder. prosecutors faced a difficult choice: pursue a murder charge with circumstantial evidence, or focus on the crimes they could undeniably prove. The decision to charge her with second-degree murder was bold but necessary, signaling their belief that Sushi was responsible for Zion's death. The trial was a media circus. Sushi's defense argued there was no body, no confession, and therefore no proof of a crime. They portrayed her as a flawed but loving mother, unfairly targeted by a system desperate for answers. The prosecution countered with a compelling narrative: a mother overwhelmed by her responsibilities, spiraling into desperation, and ultimately taking drastic measures to hide her actions. Key witnesses included forensic experts who testified about the decomposition evidence and neighbors who described the eerie silence that had enveloped the Staples household. The surveillance footage of Sushi buying cleaning supplies and her incriminating search history were presented as undeniable evidence of her intent to cover up a crime. Sushi herself took the stand, an act that polarized the courtroom. She wept openly, insisting she loved Zion and would never harm him. But her erratic answers and inability to maintain a consistent story weakened her credibility. Her shifting emotions, ranging from sorrow to indignation, left the jury unconvinced. After days of deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. Sushi was found guilty of child neglect, fraud, and obstruction of justice, but the jury remained deadlocked on the murder charge. Without Zion's body, or a definitive cause of death, they could not unanimously convict her of homicide. For Marcus and the community, the verdict was bittersweet. Sushi's conviction meant she would face years behind bars, but the lack of closure regarding Zion's fate left a lingering void. Marcus stood outside the courthouse, addressing reporters. "This isn't justice," he said. "Not until we know the truth about my son." Months turned into years, and Zion's case grew cold. The community honored his memory with a mural downtown, a colorful depiction of a smiling boy holding a kite, accompanied by the words, "Always in our hearts." Marcus channeled his grief into advocacy, pushing for reforms in child welfare systems to prevent other children from falling through the cracks. For Sushi, prison became her new reality. Though she maintained her innocence, her protests fell on deaf ears. The mystery of Zion's disappearance hung over her like a shadow, a question she refused to answer even as the years wore on. In the end, Zion's story became a tragic cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of neglect, the limits of the justice system, and the enduring pain of unanswered questions. Though the world moved on, Marcus never gave up hope that one day the truth would come to light, and his son's story would finally reach its rightful conclusion. This case leaves us with so many unanswered questions, but one thing is clear: the pursuit of justice and truth is never straightforward. It takes perseverance, courage, and sometimes an uncomfortable confrontation with the realities of our systems. What do you think? Is there more to this story, or will the truth ever truly come to light? Thank you for watching and joining us on this journey today. If you found this case as compelling as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more stories like this. Your support helps us continue exploring these important narratives. Until next time, stay curious and take care.